Hey, welcome to the Junk Project. I'm your host, Michelle Hill. And today our guest is Lewis, and I'm not going to say that last name because I don't want to mess it up. How do you say your last name?
Vandervalk.
Okay, cool. All right. And we are going to be talking to Lewis about what he does for his business and some of the struggles that he's had to deal with and some of the winnings he's had to deal with and all that kind of stuff. So could you please share with us, our audience, on what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for having me on. Congratulations for the new podcast. It's exciting to see you branching out into this, and it's a fun world. So just appreciate you having me on. So my
Thank you.
name's Louis Vandervalk. I'm based in New Brunswick, Canada. So it is all ice and snow up here right now, but we do still get some summers. They're not the same as Texas by any means. But yeah, based here in New Brunswick, but we service clients all over. So all over North America. We're looking at we've got a couple clients in the UK that are looking to come on soon. But we do everything Google related. So websites, SEO, Google Ads, and we've just started doing logos as well. So we work with contractors from a lot of different home service industries, whether it be junk removal. That's a big one because we've also recently started a junk removal business. But paving, tree service, home remodeling, you name it, we probably work with them. And so that's kind of what we're doing is helping businesses grow and dominate their local market.
I love it. I love it. So how do you do that? Like, what do you do for these businesses? If you could break it down just like a little bit more. Some like me, I have a hard time understanding, especially anything Google related. I just don't get it.
Yeah, no, and it can seem like a complicated thing, and a lot of people explain it in a way that's complicated. But basically, we work, anything Google related is what we work on. So it starts with the website, being kind of the foundation, and then we build up from there. Getting the website to be an authoritative source for what you do and where you do it, right? So if it's junk removal, we say, hey, we do junk removal and we do it in Dallas, right? And so telling Google that and then answering the questions that people are looking for, those are the biggest things. There's a lot of nuances, that would take longer than we have here to get into. But at the core, it's about telling Google what you do, making sure that it's an easy thing for people to jump in and get in touch with you and reach out to you. And then, making that all come together into, something that works seamlessly.
Right. Yeah, I just learned maybe a few days ago that the title on my picture should not be like I am whatever it is, image 4, right? It should be, it should have all this stuff listed. And I'm like, oh, wow, I had no clue. And so it's so funny because sometimes I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing pretty good. I know all this stuff. And then something like that comes up and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't know anything, so it's really amazing how much there really is to all this, your website and marketing. Well, and Google in general, I mean, they're just huge. It's amazing all the stuff that tie together to help promote your business. I'm working on redoing my website because I'm lucky to get maybe 7 people to come see it a year. I don't know how many people see it, but that might be how many people contact me through the contact thing. So yeah, I'm redoing everything now. And it's crazy just to try and learn all this stuff that Google has. So how long have you been doing Blue Crocus Solutions?
So it's been coming up on 3 years now. So it was, the first year was while I was still working my engineering job, and then so it's been about 2 years full time now.
Wow. So what kind of engineer? I did not know you were an engineer. I'm always fascinated with engineers because I find them super smart. So what kind of engineer were you?
Yeah, the smartness we all like to pretend that we are and look down on everyone else. But we're all humans after all. I was a mechanical engineer, so I got a degree in mechanical engineering, and worked that. I was doing mechanical design in my job for people who couldn't drive a car. Like they didn't have legs, or they couldn't use their legs. They were paralyzed, or they were maybe amputees, and so they needed different apparatus for being able to drive with one hand. So that was the design work I did, and then really just discovered, I enjoyed the job. I didn't think there was a good ascension model for me in the company I was working for, and then our son was born, and I realized, I was going to work before he was up, and I was coming back and seeing him for maybe an hour. And so, we'd like to have 4 kids. Our third is due in a couple weeks. And so, at the time we said, let's see if there's something I can do from home, because I'd always wanted to start a business, always wanted to be involved in that, just never really taken that leap. So it was 3 months after I graduated with a degree that I started this business, and then
Wow.
dove in, with both feet. Yeah.
That's definitely a risk, especially when you have little kids, So that's amazing. And congrats on your third child. That's awesome. How old are your first
Thank you.
two?
The first is 2.5. Sorry, he'll be 3 in June, so two and a bit. And then our youngest was 1 in November. So we're having them pretty close together.
Yeah. So I wanted like 20 kids, and then I had my one, and I'm like, no, I'm good. So I don't know where 20 came in, but hey, I don't know why I felt like I had to have a football team and then some. I'm not sure, but I'm so glad I just had the one. So it's really funny. But he's 30 now, so it doesn't matter. We're good. But so I had some, I had some questions I wanted to ask you, if that's all right. So
of course.
Do you have a favorite quote that you'd like to share?
Well, that I have, I would say my favorite, and I think this is especially applicable to jumping into business, is imperfect action beats perfect inaction every day of the week. Because I think a lot of us sit around with these great ideas, but we never take action on them. And so that's what's been gotten me to this point is living on that mantra.
I meet a lot of people, and they're like, oh, I have this idea and I want to do something about it. And then they don't do it. And then somebody else does it. Right. And they're like, that was my idea. And I'm like, whatever. I mean, you didn't do anything with it. So no, it's not, it wasn't
exactly.
It's just funny how people think like that. And I had invented a parking brake for shopping carts, and we did this in the 90s. So it was really neat. Sold it to a couple of stores. But I noticed as I get older, the creative side on inventing anything has gone downhill. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know how to get that back going again. But it was really fun I don't know about fun, but it was fascinating to learn. You come up with this idea, and then you've got to figure out how to, if it's a product, how to build a prototype, or make your first whatever, because you don't have the machinery to do all that, right? And so I'm always fascinated with stuff like that. I'm definitely not an engineer, but I do love to figure things out like that and how to make things work. And and my son was just as bad. Like, he took his PlayStation 2, I don't know, like 15 years ago, and literally every bit was out. Right. He took the whole thing apart, and he would use motors for other things. Like, he built me a flashlight, which is the funniest thing. And it had,
from his PlayStation,
and it had a literal light switch on it that he had like duct taped to it. And then the bulb was like, oh my God, like not even how big was it? It was maybe a quarter of an inch, it was just an itty bitty bulb. And then he used like size D batteries for this little bitty bulb. And I'm like, oh, and he put it in a PVC pipe. And then he added a little piece of rope so I could put it on as my shoulder as a handle, to hold it, right? But it was the coolest thing. I loved it, right? So I love people who anybody who does stuff like that, because I'm just fascinated with how things work and stuff. So anyhow, what is one of your favorite books?
That is a great question. I mean, you can see behind me, there's there's a lot of books behind there, not all of which I've read. There's another stack over here. I would say I have a lot of favorite books, but probably the most impactful, especially in business, was The Go-Giver. I read it March of 2020, when everything was kind of, going downhill.
Mhm.
And I was actually in a little bit of a tight spot. Like I knew I was going to be going full time pretty soon. The business wasn't at the point that I wanted it. And so I was getting a little bit desperate. I was like, anybody that can give me money, I'm going to go out and, see what I can do. And I read the book and it completely shifted my paradigm, completely shifted the foundation of how I operate, whether it be in business or in just personal life. But basically the concept of it is, it's being a go-giver, giving and giving and giving and expecting nothing in return. And so I started implementing things like that in business, hopping on calls with people, helping them out with their website, and not necessarily because I knew that they were going to be a sale. And that has compounded things ridiculously. Like it still shocks me every time that I truly lean into that, where that goes. But that's probably been the most impactful book that I've read. I mean, I've read a lot of books. There's some ones on personal development and stuff, but that probably stands out as the biggest one.
I love it. I love it. Somebody posted in sales group, I can't remember the title of it now, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Ryan Stewman's sales group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So somebody posted, I don't know when, a few days ago, he's like, had a question about why would you work with your competition or something like that? So we've been doing that a lot here in the DFW area. And Ricardo videos everything. I got to get better at that. I really suck at remembering to videotape my removals and stuff. But I responded to that and he's like, man, you completely changed my mindset on being able to work with your competition. And I said, man, it's really cool. It's just about building each other up and helping each other out. And I've been wanting to do that for years because I used to drive 18-wheelers and deliver fuel in the DFW area. And the one thing I noticed about that industry is the other companies, if they can't get to that store, they still have to pay, but they would have somebody else go do it, right? So that way the store didn't run out of fuel. But I just thought, hey, you're hiring your competition to go take care of your store, right? So I was always fascinated with the fact that, you can do that and it's still everybody benefits, right? And I just thought that was the coolest thing that I had recently learned. And it was neat that somebody had just brought that up a few days ago in that group.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
It really is. And, it doesn't take much to help other people out. And I'm still trying to figure out ways to do that with my business because I'm like, I don't know how to help people out. I feel kind of stuck. So I'm still working on that because I'm like, nobody's sitting here asking me questions about anything, except when they call for an estimate. And I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to figure out how can I educate people and how can I share with them. So I think what I'm deciding to do is just write a book and go here, read this book. So I think that's what I'm going to go down because nobody's really asking me the questions, enough where I could share the information, but these are questions that have been asked, or these are experiences that I've gone through that maybe I can share, and help other people, especially being that I was a hoarder for like 20 years. So, I've only had my business 8 years and it was just a crazy, it's very difficult because even the stuff I hoarded wasn't necessarily mine, right? It was just stuff I got free somewhere or I paid for storage units. But after I got it, all of a sudden it was personal, right? And I didn't want to let it go, but it had no meaning, but I couldn't let it go. So it's just weird how your mentality changes on that.
Yeah.
So my other question for you is, what is one of your top strategies on how you operate your business?
It probably comes back to the go-giver mentality. It would be, if I can help 10 people and one of them becomes a client, that's enough people to keep us going and to keep us growing. So it genuinely is, how can I help 10 people? My goal is 15 people, new people that I can touch a week. And that, has crazily bloomed over just the last 6 months into some pretty crazy growth. But giving, and then on the back end, when we have clients, it's, you know, when things go wrong, going right to them and saying, hey, this is what's happened. I posted a couple weeks ago, there was a client, we had their website set up. It was an epoxy client, had their website set up, you know, and everything was going great. I touched him like 3 months later. I was like, how's it going? He's like, oh, things are kind of slow. I still haven't seen anything through the website. And I was like, what is going on? So I went in and there was like 20 leads that were all in the website, but that just hadn't gone over to his email. And
Oh,
that was a
no.
gut punch. It was before we had, you know, the systems in place to check everything. It was kind of, that was a gut punch. And I called him right up and I said, man, like this is on me. You know, what can we do? A couple of them had come in, you know, in the last week or so. So he did call him up and he got a few jobs from it, but it was like, man, like that, I just wanted to hide under a rock and pretend nothing had happened. That was my first instinct, right?
Yeah.
But going to him and saying, hey, this is what happened. You know, we're human. We're going to make sure it never happens again. There was some freedom in that. You know, at the same time, it was pretty embarrassing. But learning from that, and you know, when things go wrong, going to the client and saying, hey, this is what's happened. This is what we did. This is how we're going to make it right. And going through that.
I love it. I love it. And, you know, I think the most important part of that is you were accountable for everything that happened. You know, it's very frustrating when you deal with a company and they're like, that wasn't me, or, you know, that's not my fault, or, you know, whatever they want to say. So I love
Yeah.
when people are accountable. I mean, yeah, it sucks because I've been on that end where you make a really bad mistake and you're like, I just don't want to say anything, but you know, you're going to do it. So, you know, you're going to do the right thing and man up to it and be accountable for your actions. And I just think that, I think it shows customers that, like you said, you are human and you are going to make mistakes, and hey, we caught it, we fixed it, bam, let's go, let's move on, you know?
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's really neat. What makes you feel inspired, like your best self?
Oh, I think it comes back to helping people. I mean, it's a theme that I don't think I knew was going to happen from this podcast. But I genuinely feel the most alive, like when I'm on calls with people and I'm able to help them. There's been several people in the last couple of weeks that you know, posted in numbers and said, hey, you know, things are not going well. We've been with someone, they've been, you know, screwing us around and we haven't seen any results from paying thousands of dollars. So just hopping on calls like that, and then spending an hour or so and saying, hey, here's all the things that you can do. We're probably not going to become clients, but that doesn't matter. You know, helping them out and helping them figure out how to go forward. What we do isn't rocket surgeries, like handle out some high level things that people can do, and helping them on that path. And then they come back and say, hey, we implemented, we're seeing some results already. That is like, those are my favorite moments. And that's where I genuinely feel like I'm making a difference.
I think that's awesome. I love it. I love it. So I have a list of questions, right? So I was like, I don't know exactly what kind of questions to ask on the podcast. This is my first time to ever have a podcast. And man, I've really come completely, I think I lost you. I think we lost him. So we are going to wait just a minute. There he is. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. And we apologize for that. That's just technology sometimes, you know, it just doesn't always work when you want it to. So my next question, so what I was saying is, right, I'm like, I didn't know what questions to ask. So I'm like, ooh, let's Google, you know, questions to ask on a podcast. So, you know, that's where I'm coming with up this information. I'm so new to this and it's so uncomfortable right now because it's so new to me. And this is like way out of my comfort zone, but I'm proud of myself for pushing this. So I do have another question. And it is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it say?
Oh, that's a good one.
I thought so.
That's a really good one. I genuinely, that's a thinker for sure. And I'm gonna stall a little bit here,
Mhm.
and say, and go back to your point about, how you're nervous, and you're,
Yeah.
kind of pulling questions off the internet and everything. That is awesome. I love, I've watched, you go from idea to actually implementing, and a lot of people go through the idea process and they never, we were talking about it, a little bit earlier. They
Yeah.
never go through with it. So it's been cool to see that, to see you stepping outside your comfort zone. For those that don't know, Michelle and I met through Apex, which is a group that we're both in, and so we've, kind of been, we can see each other's posts in there. So it's been
Yeah.
cool to see you step out of that comfort zone and go into something scary. And a podcast can be scary. It can be scary jumping on and having to talk to someone. So
Yeah.
it's been cool to see that. So that's my stall, and also I wanted to touch on that.
I appreciate that. That was pretty cool. I'll help you out here a second. So this morning, when you were complimenting me, I'm thinking, it's scary because you don't want to sound like an idiot. So I'm not going to say I'm an idiot, but this morning I did do something that wasn't like super smart. So it really cracked me up because I didn't realize it till like an hour later. Right. So I like to go to Kroger to fuel up because I get the discount using the Kroger card. Right. I don't know if you have Kroger's there, but we can get fuel discounts using the Kroger card and buy groceries and stuff. So I go there. It's like a 3-cent discount. I'm like, okay, this is not worth it. I'm leaving. And I'm on empty, right? So instead of getting gas there at the regular price, which was fine, I literally leave to go to another gas station to go get gas. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. How can you do this? This is like, I don't even know what to say. So I was like, oh my God, that's like, okay, pretty dumb, but hey, whatever. So
That's funny.
yeah, I was talking to my mom. I'm like, how embarrassing. I mean, you're right there. Just fill up.
That's funny. That's funny, and I appreciate you filling the gap there. So I think what I would put on a billboard would be something along the lines of, I don't have it fully developed, but while we were chatting, it was kind of coming to me. Something along the lines of, leave the world a better place than you found it. Something to inspire people to do that one thing, buy a coffee for each other. Do something for someone who, an older person who needs help. Something along the lines. Like I said, we'd have to develop the messaging to make it hit. But probably that's probably where it would go.
Yeah, I love the elderly. I love messing with them. They're hilarious. So I used to go to the senior centers, right? And they would give me a hard time. Don't think they're just, sitting there, whatever, playing bingo. No, they're giving you a hard time too, right? So this one guy, it was just hilarious. I said, man, hey, I'm not following you or whatever. And he said something back, and I said, look, sir, if you're not careful, I'm gonna kick that cane out from under you. And he just like, yeah, whatever. It was just funny. I love older people. They're just great. So anyhow, what is the best compliment you have ever received?
Probably hearing that I've done a good job, and that might sound a little bit funny, but I grew up not hearing any compliments, and so as I grew up and started doing good jobs on things, when people said that, it was really uncomfortable for me. And so hearing that from people, I've grown into appreciate that I do a good job. Yeah, I would say in general that excites me and makes me feel really good.
I like it. I had a review left, and it was probably the coolest review I've ever gotten, just because it was something along the lines, Michelle did like such an awesome job that even Shakespeare would run out of words. And I'm like, damn. So I just thought it was neat because I've never had anything like that. So it was just a funny review, but I'm like, that's the only one that really just sticks out. Like, I'm like, wow, how does Shakespeare run out of words? That's amazing. But it's really cool. Yeah. So I got another question. Tell me.
I'm liking this, by the way. This is a fun one.
Yeah. Well, I learned something with you. I thought, I think I should probably send out these questions so that way you're not stuck on the spot going, So I learned something from this podcast doing that. I think I'm going to send these out. That way people got a time to think, because it's hard to think on the spot. I freeze up every time. That's what I do.
No, I like them coming cold because then it hits you differently than, having time to think about it. But, I don't think there's a problem with sending it out early.
Okay. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll just ask them if they want them. And then that way they can choose whether to go cold or have it prepared a little bit. That's pretty cool. So the next question is, tell me about a time you failed, but not the one you just told us, right? And learned from it.
Well, which one? There's a lot. I'm thinking of one that would be relevant. There's an interesting story that I've told before. I don't think I've ever told it on a podcast, but when I was younger, like we always had a family garden. So, gardening was always a thing that we did. And my mom sent my friend and I to plant the carrots. And she was very specific. Like, carrot seeds are really, really small, for those that don't know. And so you've got to be really careful when you lay them in the ground. And typically, because they're so small, you get them, a lot really close together. And then you've got to, when they start coming up, you pull some of them up in between, so that you don't have like 50 million carrots in 1 inch length, right? So she was like, you got to be really careful, guys, and plant them every inch, so that they can have room to grow into carrots. And we were like, yeah, that's fine, that's fun, but let's make this a lot faster because it's really tedious. I think I was probably 10 or something. It was a fun summer day. There's the pool waiting to be jumped into, lots of other stuff that could be happening. And so I said, I've got this brilliant idea. We'll just take the little paper bag that they come in, and we'll fold the opening into a little bit of a V form, and then we'll just run the bag along the aisle and just let the seeds just fall out into the row. And so he did that, and then we were like, cool, we're done. And it was like a 10-minute job, and we went back and it was like, Mom, we're all done. And she's like, whoa, like what? so because they're so small, we couldn't go back and pull them all up. But she did have us, when they came up, it's called thinning. We went in and we had to thin each one of those carrot seeds out. And so there was a lesson there in, following instructions can save time in the long run, because I would have preferred to put the time in on the front than go back and essentially have to weed out these carrots. But that lesson's always stuck with me. There's an element of sometimes the long way of doing things saves time in the long run.
I think that's just an excellent story and excellent point. I suck at gardening, so I don't even go down that road. I can't grow flowers. I've tried, and I forget to water. So I like the planting part, but the watering is where I seem to have difficulty in remembering to go out there and do it, that they're even out there, because I'll forget. So
I'm right there with you. I mean, I don't believe we have any plants in the house, because Alyssa and I both are not. I had a plant for a while that I would use as like a background for the podcast, and it eventually got yellower and yellower. So it's like, this is looking worse than no plant at all.
That's funny. My mom gave me a plant, and it was like a vine, and it was very resilient. I mean, it was okay if you forgot to water it, because I might forget to water it for a week, right? And then the dirt was just so dry. And then I go back and water it, and I mean, it grew. But I told her, I said, look, this is too much for me, so I'm gonna give it back to you. I don't want it. My husband's the gardener, and he loves to do gardens and things like that. Nah, I'm good with that. But I love that story. So let's see here. Tell us something interesting about yourself that most people don't know.
That's a fun one. So I actually just did a post. I did a three truths and a lie, which got some fun engagement. Something that a lot of people don't know. I'll say a couple that actually came out of that post.
Right.
Something that a lot of people don't know is I'm 6'8", and I look like a normal person sitting behind the camera, because you can't. there's no.
Oh my
there's
gosh.
no perspective. Yeah.
I would have never guessed you were 6'8". That's funny. Well, one time I met Steve Gamlin. When I met him at an Apex event, he's tall too. And I'm like,
Really?
oh my God. Yeah. I don't know. Anybody taller than 5 foot is like tall to me, because I'm 5 foot. So I don't know if he was 6 foot or not, but I was shocked, because you don't, you sit and talk to him on the internet and things like this, and you do not look like you'd be that tall. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. No, it's funny. And then the other one that I had in the post was, I carried a chicken up a mountain in the Philippines. And so I went to the Philippines in 2012, and we volunteered in an orphanage there. We ended up being there for a month, which was incredible. And on one of our trips, we went up to the mountains in Baguio and just spent a day hiking with the locals. Went up to a church there, and they're like, "All right, cool. You take the chicken. That's our lunch." And it was a live chicken, and we just like carried it strung over like a knapsack.
Yeah.
And we get up there, and then they burnt the feathers off of it while it was still alive. And so this chicken was the toughest chicken I've ever had in my entire life. I made some really good friends with the neighborhood dogs, and I just would like pass them the chicken pieces when no one was looking, because it was tough meat.
I'll tell you, to me, it's difficult. I am a hunter, and my hunting takes place at the grocery store after the fact. So I cannot watch my food go through that, and I sent my husband and brother, and I don't remember who else, to I don't know what like a military camp kind of thing, right? Where they do all this stuff. It did not go well for some of the people because they took a live pig and killed it. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't know they were going to do this, right? I probably wouldn't have gotten tickets to go to this I think it was for a week or something. I'm like, oh man, I can't do that. So are you a country boy? I mean, do you live in the country or grow up in the country?
I grew up in the country for sure. Yeah, we live on the outside of the city now, so it's a bit different. But yeah, I grew up in the country. One of my summer jobs was actually, working at a butcher shop. We call them an abattoir up here, but I was like the person who killed chickens. That was not a fun job.
My husband did the same thing. He said this. He did say the exact same thing you said too. It was not fun. Wow.
No, not fun at all. But yeah, I grew up in the country. Grew up on a farm, so we had a lot of fun experiences there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so I wanted to, we're winding down. So I wanted you to be able to leave your contact information and your podcast information for our guests.
Sure.
So if they wanted to reach out to you, they could.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Hey, no worries.
Anyone who wants to get in touch with me, Louis Vandervalk on Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook. Louis Vandervalk on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. And then if you want to go to our website, it's bluecrocus.ca. So you can find us there. You can reach out by phone or whatever there. And then the podcast is the Blue Crocus Experience. So I've had a lot of cool guests. We'll have to have you on as well. But it's been a fun chance to get to meet people.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it a lot. I had fun with the questions too, because I'm writing notes, so I can remember things that I learn about people. Because I don't know, I'm fascinated with everybody's story. They're so unique and obviously different, that I learn stuff all the time. So I love you sharing and appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, you're welcome. And y'all have an awesome day. Thank you.